Converted man here. Okay, so let's get back to the video. Let's see how closely we can pay attention to this argument.
Skeptic. Saul was a Jewish religious scholar, and by his own account, a zealot who was an enemy of the early Christ followers. In fact, Saul terrorized the early church. He hunted down and he killed the first Christians. That was his job. And while he was on one of his seek and destroy missions, Saul claimed to have had an encounter with the resurrected Jesus. And this encounter...
Okay, so how close are you paying attention? Oh. Right. Also, the video that you just watched of me saying deconverted man, that wasn't me. That was a past self me. Yeah, I know. Amazing, right? It's like, you know, you can trick people and stuff. You can say things that aren't really true. You can do things that you know, like, look, watch. I'll just, you know, look, here it is. Hey, converted man here. Okay, so let's get back to the video. Let's see how closely we can pay attention to. See what I'm saying? So, why is that important? Because people can lie. I know. People can lie. People can lie. So, according to Paul, he did all these things. According to Paul. That's nice. Who cares? Why should I believe Paul? Is there actual records from the early church of Paul doing these things? Nope. There isn't. There's just Paul's writing. That's it. Now, let's go back a bit. Because he said that there was. This is historical, right? So there should be evidence. Let's listen. Listen to what evidence there is that Paul actually did these things.
He hunted down and he killed the first Christians. That was his job. And while he was on one of his seek and destroy missions, Saul claimed to have had an encounter with the resurrected Jesus.
Okay. So did you hear it? No? Me either. Well, maybe he said it and I skipped it. No, he didn't.
Who we now know as the apostle. Facts behind the story of the man known as Saul of Tarsus, who we now know as the Apostle Paul, is a crucial piece of history that has to be addressed by every skeptic.
I'm a skeptic.
Saul was a Jewish religious scholar,
and
by his own account, a zealot who was an enemy of the early Christ followers. In fact, Saul terrorized the early church. He hunted down and he killed the first Christians. That was his job.
How do you know that? By his own account is how you know that. Not by, here's this church that has this, document that says, and then, Saul came by again and killed a bunch of our people, and, we've put a bounty on him, but we don't know how to stop him or whatever. That was his job. His job was to kill Christians. Who hired him? Who was paying for him to do this? How is that legal? I didn't know that you could have bounty hunters. So then Paul pretends, to have this vision of Christ, and I do say pretends. I think that Paul. Here's my here's my addressing this history, which isn't history, it's just Paul saying stuff. Paul was the first apologist. He knew about Christianity to some extent. And he didn't like what they were doing. He wanted attention. He wanted power. He wanted prestige. He wanted to get in there and do things with the church, but he wanted to run things his own way. And he knows, I can't just go in and, start preaching. I'm not, who am I? So Paul is going to make up a story to tell different Christians, to spread around gossip about himself, that he's been persecuting and killing and hunting down Christians, even though, he's a tax collector. Because do the Christians owe taxes and that's why he's hunting them down and killing them? Not according to Pastor. According to Pastor, it was his job to just go kill Christians, not to collect. So which is it? Anyway, so I think Paul, Saul, whatever, the change of name doesn't, I don't know. Nothing really big there. Maybe it's just like he's like, Saul. And then I say I'm Paul. Ooh, Paul, Saul. Ooh. Well, of course that rhymes in English. I don't know if it rhymed in Arabic or not Arabic. The whatever the language. I don't know anymore what they spoke. I don't care. Pastor doesn't bother to tell us, so why should I bother to look up what language they spoke in? Apparently it's just take his word for it. Why shouldn't we? Because no one's ever made up seeing God before. And why does Paul supposedly get this vision? Well, I'll tell you what. He gets it so he can then tell the Christians, hey, I'm an authority now. I saw God. Well, I saw Jesus personally. So now I get to say stuff. I get to tell you what to do or not to do in your churches. The very early churches, and I imagine them meeting in caves or in people's houses. If this was still before Christianity was legal, this would be done in secret. But I have a feeling that this is sometime around where it's semi-legal or permitted or whatever. I don't know. But Paul wants in. Paul wants to be a part of this. And so he makes up this story. Maybe he, has some people spread it around, rumors, gossips, whatever. And maybe he pays some people to go spread his story. Why not? You say, well, what motive does he have? He has the motive of being a person of power. That's an extraordinary, alluring position to gain. That will get you money. It will get you attention. Might get you women. Might get you all sorts of things. Who knows? But bottom line, power in and of itself is enough for most people. Paul made up the story. Completely and wholly fabricated it. He didn't have a vision. That didn't happen. He just made up the story full cloth. That's my hypothesis. But anyways, we're going to pretend that Paul really saw stuff, because why not? And then the question I would have is, after Paul, couldn't someone else have a vision of Jesus and then have revelations to deliver to the church after Paul? If not, why not? How do we know Paul's stuff was legitimate? What test was there? What methodology do we have to discern that what Paul is saying is relevant or true? Just because the church accepted him doesn't mean anything. They didn't have a system to decide what criteria they were going to use to decide whether Paul's ideas were valid or not. Well, look, so his letters to churches, his efforts to change those churches got him noticed. And many people of that day didn't like what he had to say, and people of today don't like Paul, what they call Paulology, or they don't like the teachings of Paul, because a lot of what he says is counter to a lot of what the other stuff says. It's like he hated women and in power. Maybe he didn't hate women, but he hated the idea of them in power. It was very much, bigoted in that way, or misogynistic in that way. And so Paul, just not a good guy. Anyways, let's listen to more of what Paul pretended to have happened to him, I guess.
Historians marvel. What could cause such a radical, powerful, instant turnaround? Saul claimed that he met the resurrected Christ, and he would later die because of his claim. So scholars are in agreement that the historical record reports multiple early and independent eyewitness accounts. And these multiple early independent testimonies, even eyewitness testimony from enemies and combatants, must be accounted for. Historical fact number 4.
Hey, remember I have my mic turned off. Remember, this was originally called Skeptic Course. It's still the Skeptic Course. That is the name of this. So we're treating it like he really actually wanted it to be skeptical, but it's not. What enemies recorded this? What people? Who? You mentioned, you say, these enemies, these people did it. Who are they? All these eyewitnesses. Who? Do you have names? Now, of course, we could go to the eyewitness is not reliable. We all know that. Eyewitness testimony is crap. People don't remember stuff. It's been demonstrated many times. There's psychological experiments demonstrating that your attention span is focused, and so you see certain things and miss other things. There's that one test. Once you've done it, you know the trick, so you can't do it again. But it has you count a ball, right? And then it will be like, oh, how many times did the ball get passed back and forth? And you have the number, and then it goes, oh yeah, and did you see the person that walked through the screen? And you're like, the what? And they're dressed like a monkey or something. It's like, oh, and did you see the roller skating monkey or whatever? It's like, do what? And you go back and you're like, there he is the whole time, and you didn't because you were focusing on something else. But once you know the trick, it can't work again. It'd have to be a different scenario. But that's the problem of many with eyewitnesses. They do this in police training. There was this wonderful documentary reality show-ish thing about the police training, and they had a fake robber come in and shoot the gun and yell at the person at the front of the class and then run off. And they said, okay, students, after they stopped ducking and covering because they didn't know that this was going to happen, they're like, okay, who was that? Describe him or her. Tell what clothes were they wearing? What, how tall were they? How old were they? Whatever. And like they had nothing. Like they got like a couple of things. In fact, it was another one of their instructors, and they couldn't even identify that. And they had the instructor for a while. So these are people about to, they're training to become police, and now they're doing this to understand that a traumatic event is very difficult to accurately take note of what's happening, because when you interview the people and all you have is the eyewitnesses, you have to go in knowing that they're going to give you very little information. That's just how the human brain is. If we have a video recording, that's, we love that, because then it takes away that human factor, because now you can pause it, you can focus, you're removed from the, and of course, if you're an officer of the law, you're removed from that initial situation. Now you're removed to another degree because you have a video that you can pause and manipulate and look at, and you can have other people look at it too and see what's going on. But we don't have that. What we have is people that say that they saw this or that. Who knows what they said? Who knows what they saw? This isn't good reporting, but we don't even need to complain about that. I'm doing it anyways. We don't have to complain about that because we don't even have the idea. We don't even have proof that there were eyewitnesses. What you're saying is there were eyewitnesses, and then you don't name them. You don't say where they lived, who they are, how old are they, or anything. It's just they were there. That's not skeptical in nature. That's not critical in nature. That's just asserting something with zero support. It's called a bald assertion. Okay, I see you, Gur. We'll do a thing later. Okay.
The original disciples suddenly came to believe in the resurrection of Jesus despite having no expectation of it. The original disciples suddenly came to believe in the resurrection of Jesus despite having no expectation of it.
This is said many times by apologists, that they suddenly came to believe this, and also they had no expectation of this. Well, no. You got to remember, we're dealing with a time period where superstition runs rampant. Christianity is one of many religions of the time. The no-name gods, the mystery gods. They called pagan gods, essentially, because the god was whatever Rome said the god was. So all the other gods that were around to worship, you would pick up things. That's how religions start anyways. They don't, yes, you can start a new one, but you can't just come up with completely brand new ideas. You're going to have to borrow them. All ideas are copied from something else. There really technically isn't something new in a sense. And think about it, like the invention of the wheel. Well, that's not really, yes, it's an invention, but it came from a wheel. It's something that we already saw, rocks rolling. We're just like, hey, I bet we could make rocks roll a little bit better. And, there you go. So in that same way we have with religion, these ideas that are floating around in the zeitgeist, so to speak, zeitgeist. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. The culture, and some, people come back from the dead. Well, that's already there. If Jesus supposedly raised Lazarus, then that's already there. You already have a precedent for somebody coming back from the dead. If that's already a story that you've told yourself, that you believe, that other people have told and circulated around, whether you were there personally to see it or not is irrelevant. The story is circulated around, then it's already there. The idea that somebody can come back from the dead has already been established by your own prophet, your own preacher, your own pastor, and your cult leader, which is Jesus at the time. It would have been a cult, would have been considered a cult, because in a cult the leader is alive, in a religion the leader is dead. That's, okay, it's a little bit more complicated for cults, but at any rate, so if Jesus said, and then I brought that person back to life, or you wrote or you believe that Jesus brought somebody back to life, then why can't Jesus come back to life? So saying that they didn't expect it or know that this could happen or anything like that is completely, utterly false. We know that's false because it's in the stories earlier on. So the precedent has already been established. End of discussion. And it's been established in the other religions around at the time, or ideas like it have been established. It's not that hard to have that idea change. And also this suddenness. How quickly was it? We don't know. We have no idea how fast the disciples came to believe this. We don't know that it was instantaneous. We're told that it's instantaneous, but we do not know that it was instantaneous. It could have taken quite some time.
As one scholar put it, you need a sufficient launching pad to explain the launch of this missile known as Christianity. And it can't be this gradual ramp of legend being built up over decades or generations. It was an instant liftoff. Men and women who were one day hiding and cowering and denying they even knew Christ were the next day willing to die for the claim that he had risen from the dead.
Again, this is asserted without any evidence at all. How do you know this? You don't. It's written. That's what's written down. Kind of. Maybe. But it's not supported anywhere except in apologists. That's it. The apologists are the ones that make this case. That's it. Nobody. They say historians and they never name names or anything. Of course, because I can do the same thing. All the scientists say whatever, and that makes whatever true. It's like, no, you need to give us names so we can, you need to give us references. You need to give us citations. But none of that is present because none of that exists. Or what is there is actually embarrassing to show us. So we do not know how quickly it happened, or even that it happened. What we know is that it says it happened, and actually doesn't even really necessarily say what you say that it says, because the idea that they were willing to die, is that really in the Gospels, or is that something in Acts, or does that come later? Where does that tradition come from? And of course, Apologia already looked at the disciples and looked for them actually dying for this belief, and it doesn't look like any of them even had that opportunity per se. So this is a traditional apologistic argument to just assert that they were willing to die for it. Well, maybe they were willing to die for it, but they didn't actually get tested on whether or not they would die. But that doesn't matter, because that doesn't make it true anyway. What somebody is willing to die for doesn't make that thing true. Now, this is something that apologists can't comprehend for whatever reason, okay? Okay, if I have put my time, effort, and energy into something, whatever that is, and maybe at first I knew it was a lie, or maybe I still know that it's a lie, I have what's called the sunken cost, where I've devoted however much time and energy and effort into this. So it's better to keep going than to give it up, because I have very little, if nothing, to gain from giving it up. At least that's what my brain tells me. So this is the sunken cost fallacy, where I have thrown all this money at the casino, so I'm already in. I've already lost $10,000. I might as well throw in another $10,000 in hopes that I will then win. there's these like coin flip games, and it's literally a 50-50, or as close as we can get to that chance, and you bet on it. And so, okay, heads or tails. How much do you want to bet? Okay, we're gonna flip the coin. If you win, you get not double the money. You get a little bit less because the house always wins. So you give me 5% of what you bet, and then we flip. Okay, so heads, you get a little bit more money. Great. Oh yeah, you won. And then, are you gonna go again? Sure. And there's all sorts of ideas of systems to beat the system, but you can't ever beat the system. There is no, well, if I lose last time, then I'll double the amount so that when I win this time, I'll gain back what I lost. But of course, you have no idea that you're going to win, so you lose again, and now you're out 3 times. Well, now I'll bet 3 times that and hope that I win. And it's pure luck. And it's always, eventually you will lose, and ultimately you're losing out anyways because the house is winning. No matter what, the house wins. And actually, games in casinos aren't 50-50. They're worse odds than that. They're horrible odds. Forget it. You might as well, on the roulette table, you spin and the marble goes, you might as well bet, I think it's double green 0, because there's only one of it on the board. It's the highest payout. But it's just as likely as any other thing. Well, okay, it's more likely that it's going to land on a color. So if you bet a color red or black, then because that's more evenly distributed, then it's, your probability is about 50-50-ish. It's actually a little bit less. But you get paid out very little. So you might as well put it on that, because all the other numbers, you can bet any number you want. You might as well bet that one because the probability is pretty much the same anyways. So, well, why do they pay out differently? Because that's part of the thing that goes into tricking your brain into thinking that you have a chance. You don't have a chance. Not really. Now, in controlled games like blackjack, there is some sort of strategy. So there's a chance. And then, of course, if you can count cards, there's a better chance, but then they'll figure out you're counting cards and kick you out of the casino and won't let you back in again. And they might break your fingers before they do that, because you're not supposed to count cards, even though that's a thing people could do. So why not? Well, because we don't want you to win. Oh, okay. So at any rate, the point of all that is we as humans, when we put a lot of time, energy, and effort into something, we don't easily give it up. Think about relationships you've had in the past or in the present, and how much time, effort, and energy you've put into that. How much money, how much blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe there's been good times, of course, hopefully. But to have that person then say, I'm going to walk out on you today, goodbye, that's it. Are you going to let them do that? Well, maybe. But more than likely, you're going to fight for them. You're going to say, wait, no, what are you talking about? You can't just leave me. What? No. And as crazy as it seems, you will make effort to keep that relationship because you've put in a lot into it. And that's why toxic relationships are hard to escape. That's why abusive relationships sustain, is because the chemical connection that you formed with that person is really strong in your brain, and the cognitive dissonance to break that is really strong. So yeah, it might be that person, hits you every week, but at least the rest of the week they're nice to you. You shouldn't be in that kind of relationship because they hit you every week, but you justify that because you've already spent all this time in there. And so if you were captured, brought to a cell, and they said, okay, gun to your head, either you're going to give up this person or we'll shoot you, you'd be like, shoot me. Because I don't want to give that up. I'd rather lose my life than lose all that oomph. And then I can speak personally. My deconversion was painful at very much. The first year or so, I'd say, of that was really hard. I had nightmares. It was difficult emotionally because from the age 8 to the age of 32, I had sunk time and energy into the belief of Christianity. Not every day, but a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of time spent reading Bible, praying, a lot of time spent wondering what God wanted me to do or not to do, worrying if X or Y or Z was a sin, and if I was a bad, good person, whatever, and can I pray to the Holy Spirit, trying to figure out my spiritual gifts and so on and so forth. Much time, effort, and energy put into that now feels like I wasted that time. And that hurt. It hurt to consider that. I'll never get back all that. And yeah, I cried because it's like I wasted that part of my life on something that wasn't true. That's brutal. So you consider the top people, like they're the highest people up on the food chain, who have maybe even created the story from whole cloth, and they know that it's a lie. And you put that person in a place where either you say it's a lie or you die. They pick die. Because what happens if they say it's a lie? You let them go, and then the rest of the people kill them anyways. And then all they get is written out. They're no longer included in the group. They're expunged from the records. They're a heretic. They, at the end, said a lie to preserve their life. So the rest of the group will just say, no, that person lied to spare their life. So even if you had an apostle who said, upon pain of death, that's all a lie, it's all a lie, everybody else would just say, no, that person's a liar. So this whole apologetic trope of you wouldn't die for a lie is a lie. You absolutely would die for a lie. People die for lies. It happens. People die also for things that they just believe in that they don't know are a lie. So it's not true, and it didn't happen anyways. That is to say, they didn't even get put in the position where they could have repented. But even if they had, which they never got in that position anyways, even if they said that they were lying, none of the other people would believe them anyways. So it doesn't matter. No matter how it went down, you would have a different apologetic for it. But you don't have that. You don't have anybody recounting, right? So that must make it true. No, it doesn't make it true. But it's also not true that you had anybody with the ability to recant anyways. And even if you did, they probably wouldn't recant. So none of it's true on any level. This is what I call the fractal error. This is my own idea for a logical fallacy. It's not an official logical fallacy. Do not use under unless it's prescribed by your doctor. The fractal error, it's wrong on every single level that it can be wrong. That people don't respond this way to torture or threat of death because of the sunk cost. They weren't even given the chance to do that anyways. Even if they did, and they confessed, the other people would just exile them. They would write them out of history, so that person wouldn't even be there anyways, or they'd just say that person was a liar. So the idea itself is a lie on top of a lie on top of a lie on top of a lie. That's a fractal error. This apologetic trope needs to end. It won't. Anyways.
Something happened, literally in an instant, that must be explained. Now, it's important to understand that the original disciples had absolutely no expectation of a dying and rising Messiah. The Messiah dying was like Superman dying. It was unthinkable. A dying Messiah was an oxymoron. Add to that the fact that according to Jewish law, how Jesus died, by being hung on a cross, crucified, was evidence that he was under God's curse, not that he was God's Messiah. Plus, add to that the fact that the Jewish beliefs of the afterlife did not anticipate anyone being resurrected until the very end of the world. And you come to the realization that the resurrection of Jesus was a completely unanticipated event. We look.
Even if true, which again, I stress, I don't think is true, because there's lots of, remember, these people are no longer Jewish. They don't have just Jewish understanding because they've already gone away from Jewish beliefs. The people that became Christian, that were followers of Christ, they might have started off Jewish, maybe some of them, but not all of them. And so some of those people would have brought whatever beliefs of other pagan ideas that they had around in those times with them. And they would have spread those beliefs, and some of those beliefs would have been accepted, others would have been rejected, and eventually some of them would have been canonized. So it's completely incoherent to say that this is like an idea that nobody had. Surely somebody had a close idea. And again, you already had somebody getting raised from the dead by your prophet, by your Messiah. So why couldn't the Messiah itself come back from the dead? And even if it's unheard of, then all you need is one person to say that they saw Jesus alive, and other people will buy into that story. Oh yeah, I saw him too. How many people have seen Elvis? Lots of people have claimed to see Elvis. Why? Well, because they don't think the king is dead, baby. And also, people dress like Elvis. So, yeah, it's possible. You know, Jesus, according to the Bible, was an unremarkable person to see. So, it doesn't really tell you what Jesus looks like. Isn't that interesting? I would think that that's an important detail to describe as best as possible what Jesus looks like so we could identify him at the time. But no, everyone just knows who Jesus is in this story, apparently. Some guy is just showing up and he's preaching to people. Of course, you have the depictions of Jesus where he's a white man. He wouldn't be white. He would have been Jewish, so he would have been dark complexion, not black. He would have been, you know, swarthy, like a Jew. He would have looked like a Jew. He's a Jew. Oi! You know what a Jew looks like? Come on now. Huh? What's the matter with you? That's not Jewish. It's like, I don't know what that is. Something I made up. I regret everything. Okay, that's going to get flagged for heat speech and hate speech too. It's going to get flagged for I can't speak. Is what it's going to get flagged for. At any rate, so some guy in a, you know, was he dressed in robes or whatever? I don't know. But some guy standing up and saying things. This is another day. You know, this happens all the time. People stand up saying weird things, and some people listen to them. Some people go about their daily routine. So, you know, it's pretty, you know, so the idea that this is original or it's new or that he wouldn't have thought of this or somebody couldn't invent it, completely made up, completely untrue. Of course they could have. Of course there's precedent for it. But even if there isn't, then that just means it's a made up story. So what? And then they came to believe it. Yeah. Why not? Or they just decided, let's make up a story. And they made up a story. What's to stop them from doing that? Nothing and no one. Now remember, literacy is not something that is held around the culture. everyone here in the comments that are talking now, we all know how to read and write. We're doing it right now. But back then, like, there was like, 1, 2 writers, and that, it was like very rare. Literacy was very, very, very rare. So it just happens to be that a couple of the followers of Jesus are writers. Although, if those people wrote anything, that's lost to time. We don't have those originals at all. They're gone. Maybe they were destroyed, maybe they were burned, but we don't have them. So what we do have is some later person that wrote down what was already believed about things about those people. So it wasn't them anymore. And who knows, between the gap between the several years go by. It doesn't have to be that long, by the way. I don't make that big of a deal of the time between the event and the writing. You could make a big deal of it, but I don't, because the fact is it could be instantaneous. It can be instantaneous. Or it can be very, very quick at any rate, because we know that from examples of the Mormons. Joseph Smith got Oliver Cowdery to buy into his story pretty quickly. If not instantly, then pretty fast. And then they too, working together, got other people to buy into this idea pretty quickly. And after you get enough people going, it snowballs. And so it doesn't take that long, especially then if you're facing persecution. You think, well, that would just end the church, because they would just fold in on themselves and realize it's a lie. No, actually, it makes the belief stronger, because you wouldn't get punished for something that's not true. You wouldn't get punished for something unless it was actually true. And that's what you tell yourself. And that's what they tell themselves. And they say, of course, the world's not going to believe us. They're going to punish us for this belief. They're going to punish us for speaking this way. You say that because it's a tactic. You know it's true. So, anyways, what other lies has this guy got?
Look back and say, yeah, the Messiah dies and rises again. No, that was not the thinking at all 2,000 years ago. Messiah didn't die. Messiah was a conquering king. He would come and kick out all the Romans and all of the enemies, and he would reign forever. He doesn't die. And the resurrection happens at the very end of the world, not before anyone else. As scholar Dr. N.T. Wright put it, in the first century, when your Messiah died, you either went home or you got yourself a new Messiah. Now, if we want to be rational, we need to deal with the facts. When you're rational, facts are your friends. So what are the facts of this case? Here's what we know. Here's what is not disputed. Historical fact 1, after his crucifixion, Jesus was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea.
I dispute that. Over here, I'm disputing that. It's not a fact. It's written down, but that doesn't make it a fact. It is a fact that it is said in the Gospels. But how do you know it's true? Well, it says it in the Gospels. Yeah, I know it says it in the Gospels. Does it say it anywhere else? Do we have an ownership deed that this guy has for this tomb? Do we have records of that guy? No, because they didn't keep records like that. We don't. So no, this is not a fact. And yes, it is disputed. But again, you're saying it's not disputed. Not disputed by whom? Who are the people that might dispute it? Are you just ignoring them? Maybe you are. If so, why? Do you mean not disputed among apologists? Well, yeah, sure. But these so-called facts are not facts, and they are disputed. Look, I'm doing it right now. There wasn't this guy. He didn't have a tomb. This didn't happen. That's me disputing this.
Historical fact number 2, on the Sunday following his death, the tomb of Jesus was found to be empty by his women followers.
How many? Every single gospel has different numbers of women that were there. 1, 2, a group of them, and also the time of day is different. And also the rock is rolled away. It's not rolled. There's an angel. There's a guy there. There's a guard. There isn't a guard. But details. Details. Let's just look. Doesn't matter. There was at least one woman. That's all that matters. And she saw that Jesus wasn't in there, and so then she ran away and didn't tell anybody, because that's in one of the Gospels. The women don't tell anyone. Then one of the Gospels, the women do tell them, and in a different one, the women, it's unclear what they do. So every Gospel is a little bit different, but we're just gonna pretend that doesn't matter. And what you are doing is saying that, well, they all agree, all these Gospels, even though they have all these contradictions between them, they all at least agree that women went to the tomb. So that must be a fact. But only apologists do this, and only for, well, in this case, Christianity, but other religions do it for their own books. So what? The book says it's true, therefore the book is true.
Historical fact number 3, on separate multiple occasions, different individuals and even groups of individuals, including 500 people at one time, claim to see appearances of Jesus alive after his death.
Or so the book claims. Now, this group of 500, I love this because it's such a perfect number. It's such a nice, even number. And it was 500 people. Why wasn't it like 435 or 512 or whatever? My suspicion, and I can't really confirm it. I can't prove it's true. I think it has something to do with numerology. Because the Hebrew, the Jewish people were really into, they still kind of are into numerology. The number 500 doesn't really seem to have any particular meaning in and of itself, but maybe that number got changed over time and it did have some meaning. Maybe you're supposed to read it a certain way. I don't really know. And the problem is, of course, I could try to prove that it's true, but then if I start reading into it, then I could make it true by, stacking things on top of each other, and that wouldn't be good. So all I can say is, at best, it's my personal hypothesis that particular number was chosen because it meant something important. But if you actually gathered 500 people up, okay, various sizes, and then we're talking adults, right? Maybe some children too, but 500 in total, right? Because the children have to be able to talk for it to matter. If you have babies, who cares, right? So if you gathered that many people up, you're going to have them in a circle, right? That's like the best way. And if you're not in an arena, Jesus is supposedly, you always see him on this hill or whatever, and these group of people are spread out. That's the worst way to see somebody. You need an arena where it's down. Everyone's looking down to the person, or pews or something. You need a stadium. So how would you get 500 people to be able to all clearly see the same person? They don't have video technology back then, because God didn't tell them how to do any of that for some reason. You could not, on a flat surface, if that's what you have to work with, you're not going to get 500 people to be able to see the same person very clearly. They could all do it. They, have some hunched down and whatever. It's going to take somebody. Wouldn't this be something that you could reconstruct? If you were a Christian and you had a group of other Christians, right? Let's say you have a church. Let's say you have a pretty big church. You have a church of at least 500 people. And you just say, let's hire another person, or let's get some people here from that other church, and let's just form a group of 500 so we can see what this would have looked like, and have one guy stand there and try to have everybody see that person. Wouldn't you want to at least see what that would be like? I would, because that's a demonstrable test. Can we actually see this person if there's 500 of us all gathered around them? Can we identify who that person is? Let's make it even more difficult. We're not going to know who's going to be chosen to be that person. So some of the people are going to be able to identify them, but others might not because they're too far away. Or they're blocked by somebody else. They have to kind of, you have to kind of lean down, I'll stand on your shoulders, whatever, And you try different things to see what works. What would you'll find that the arena shape is the best shape. But okay, great. Now we can all see the guy. But how well? We're not allowed binoculars because they didn't have those back then either. Because again, God didn't tell them how to build those for whatever reason. Or maybe they did have them back then. Probably not. Glasses? Did they have glasses back then? But anyways, but no, churches do not do that. Why not? Because it's enough to hear the story. You don't have to go out and enact the story. You don't need to do that. You don't need to test whether or not this could actually happen. Just hearing the story is all you ever do in church. You hear the story told to you, and it's enough to hear it. That's it. You don't test it. You don't think about it. You don't critically analyze it. I know. I was there. Of course, you might have actually critically analyzed it, and thus now you're a skeptic or an atheist or both or whatever you want to call yourself, but you're certainly not Christian anymore if you were at one point, or you've never been Christian and you look at this stuff and go, this is nonsense because people don't come back from the dead. I don't care how many people you think saw it. It didn't happen. And none of these people have names, apparently. I brought that up in this one group. They said, oh, no, we know like 3 of their names. I'm like, really? Okay. Do you know the rest of their names? And how do you know those names? Like, it's silly. It's ridiculous. And it's a non-anything. It's an appeal to meaningless statistics. So that's a logical fallacy where you usually have percentages or whatever. It's like 9 out of 10 doctors recommend this medication, or 5 out of 10, or 4 out of 5 dentists all recommend Colgate. So that doesn't mean anything. It's just a meaningless statistic. It's just a number, and it doesn't really mean anything. In this case, not only is it meaningless, it's just made up. Just an appeal to the majority, an appeal to the bandwagon. Well, 500 people. That's amazing. 500 people saw him? Wow. You don't know that actually that happened. What you know is that somebody wrote down that happened. That's what you know. That's the only thing that you can know for sure, is that you have a document that says these words. And somebody somewhere wrote this down, but you do not know that it happened for a fact in history. Because that's not how history works anyways. History should be viewed with some skepticism. Oh, but we don't doubt we don't doubt George Washington existed. No, but we do doubt the story about him, the cherry tree, chopping down the cherry tree, and I can't tell a lie, I chopped it down. Because that's, maybe it happened, but probably not. It's one of those just stories, and we don't believe certain things. And if you go back, the further back you go, the more ludicrous certain stories become, where the leaders of countries are doing magical things, and it's like, what? The guy died and then he came back to life. What? You have that about these figures in history that we actually can confirm as real people, and then people making claims about them to deify those people. Now, why they did it, who knows? But they did. You know, if you, I've referenced Gone with the Wind. If you read Gone with the Wind, and you did not know it was a made-up story, you might think that it's history, because nothing is implausible, nothing is impossible that happens. It's all mundane. It's set in the right place. The people talk the right way. Okay, in the musical, they're singing all the time. I'm talking about the book, but it's not. And there's ways you could identify that it's not. Now, how do historians really analyze history? We never went into that. This guy never bothered to teach us that, because that would take critical thinking and thought. It would take actual skepticism, which we're not doing here. We're just pretending that the thing that we have is true. Circular reasoning. That's all that's going on here.
And historical fact number 4. The original disciples suddenly came to believe in the resurrection of Jesus despite having no expectation of it. Now, as honest detectives,
Lie.
as men and women who are willing to follow wherever the evidence leads, our explanation needs to account for all 4 of these historical facts.
They're not facts.
But here's the thing. Every naturalistic attempt, meaning non-supernatural, every naturalistic attempt over the last 2,000 years to explain these 4 facts has been universally rejected by contemporary scholarship.
Who are these scholars? Again, contemporary scholarship. What are you referring to? Who? And again, this is a scholar thing. I hate this. The word scholar means nothing to me, okay? It's an absolutely arbitrary thing. Germania and I are scholars of YouTube because we've been doing it a while. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. But who is the scholarship you're referring to? Can we get a list of names? No. They're all going to be Christian and Catholic. Yeah, of course they're going to reject it. If they accepted it, then they couldn't stay religious. Then they'd just be one of the people that reject it that you ignore. That's all. But the problem is, you're saying, and I had this debate about this, I don't know when, a while back. I linked it before. I guess I'll link it again, whatever. But I had this debate about the resurrection of Jesus and the facts and all this. And how do you explain it? And I said, that's not my burden. I said, I flatly, in my opening, I said, I absolutely am not going to try to explain how this occurred. Because that is not my burden. Because to do that would be to pre-assume that any of these 4 things actually happened. And I'm not going to do that. Because it's your burden to show that all of them happened. Then it's your burden to show that the only thing, and then that therefore means the miracle happened. In fact, your only real burden is to show that the miracle happened, which you can't do, and I know you can't do it, and he didn't do it. He kept trying to get me to offer an explanation, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not my burden. It's not happening. It's made up. It's a story. It's a myth. It's a fairy tale. I don't have to explain any of it. It's all made up, as far as I can tell. I don't need to explain away your pre-assumed so-called facts. And even when I do, you're just going to reject it anyways, because you have decided that the only explanation is the one that you want to be true. This is confirmation bias. The only explanation has to be a supernatural thing. It has to be that Jesus came back from the dead. It can't be anything else, or I'm not a Christian anymore. And if I'm not a Christian, then I'm one of you stupid skeptics. And then I'm on the other side, and I've lost the debate. So I don't want to lose. I've got to reject whatever thing that you say. So go ahead, explain it. How are you going to do it? So I'll go with the age-old thing I've done many times. Apologies if you're sick of it. I'll come up with a new analogy, okay? Let's see if I can find a door that I'm willing to test this on. Let's see. Here. See that door way back there? No, probably not. Fuck. Let's do this door. If that door opens, I'm really gonna get scared. That's my front door, okay? If that door opens, I'm fucked. Because that door's locked, okay? But let's say it opens. And after I freak out, jump out of my chair, and all that, I go look at, because I'm looking for a person, because it's fucking locked. It's just double checked. It's locked. Do you want me to go get up and look that it's locked? I'll do it. By the way, that was me tripping over this computer. Where is it? Fucking what? This. I tripped over that and I almost killed myself to check the door was locked. I hope you're happy. Sorry. Anyways, the door is locked. So let's pretend that the door suddenly opens. Ah! I freak out. You freak out. We all freak out. I run. I trip over the damn thing. Almost kill myself again. I check. Nobody's there. Nothing. No one. No animals. No anything. And I come back and I go, it must be a ghost. Explain how it could be anything else. Well, we know the door opened. Okay. We know that nobody was around. We know that no animals were around. So, could it be insects? Could it be viruses or bacteria? Could it be the wood rotted away or the mechanism failed? Could it be the wind? Could it be this? Could it be that? No, it's none of those things. We know that. So we've eliminated all the possible natural explanations. It must be a ghost. But that's not how it works. Because you'll never eliminate all possible naturalistic explanations because there are possibilities that you haven't considered yet. And there's possibilities that you don't even know about. But even if you ran out, that does not and cannot make it explanation X. Because that is a logical fallacy called appeal to ignorance / appeal to personal incredulity, depending on how you frame it. It has to be a ghost. I don't know how else it happened. Personal incredulity. The only explanation is a ghost. Nothing else could have done it. How do you explain it? I don't know. It has to be a ghost. Ignorance. Filling in the void with an answer is a logical fallacy. And that's all that's happening here. He is filling in the void by saying all these natural explanations fail, therefore God. The unnatural explanations don't fail. All of them are plausible, and all of them are way more possible than the thing that we have zero evidence for. We've never demonstrably seen somebody come back from life in this manner. Now, people have come back from life. I have to get nuanced here. If you look into it, yes, people have been brain dead, heart dead, dead as far as we could tell dead, and whoops, they're not dead. But we're talking major organ failure. We're talking major lacerations and penetrations of vital organs here. We're talking pretty damn dead. Granted, they didn't have medical technology back then because for whatever reason, God didn't tell them how to do that. So we can't really confirm that Jesus was brain dead and everything else. But if he got killed by the Romans, I'm pretty sure he's pretty damn dead. People don't recover from that. We've never seen anyone recover from that. We have no example at all. So why should we think it's a thing? What methodology could we use on other books of mythology, and that's what the Bible is, the book of mythology, to determine that those supernatural events did or didn't happen? Because if we're going to grant that this is true, why not grant that those are true? Well, because those are different gods and those gods don't really exist. How do you know? Well, because no. You don't have a methodology. Therefore, you don't have an argument. Therefore, this isn't skeptical. Also, we've hit my time limit, and my foot hurts because I tripped. And also, I'm a little bit ashamed because of how dirty, like, it was over there. Like, it's kind of a mess down there. And I showed you it. I showed you it to prove that I tripped over the thing, which you saw me do and you heard me do. But at least I checked that the door was locked. And that means something. I don't know what it means. I don't know what anything is anymore. But I do know this. We stopped at 35 minutes and 13 seconds in. That will be for my future self because I'm not writing that down. Be sure to comment in the comment thingy below because that's a thing. And like and the bell, all that stuff. Buy my book if you haven't, read it and tell me what you think. Be honest, whatever. So appeal to deconverted man fallacy. Yeah, home tour. Yes. Thank you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed me falling down. And if not, let me know in the comments. Maybe that's the content you want. I'm gonna hit the button now. Once again, that's 35 minutes, 13 seconds for yourself. Okay. All right. Hit the button. Hit it. All right. See you next time.